Coming up on today's Global Intelligence Agency Operations Report. Deep State's video game we know is a simulation isn't just for us. It's also being run against them. But there was a much bigger game at play, one they would never fully understand. And we know this because they were ringing our lines just before 6 a.m. Eastern Time on Monday. All is fair, spelled F-A-R-E, in love and war. The war for your soul, that is. We have learned a lot more about our enemy in the last few days as the 11/11 portal actually started on the 8th of November this year, which took the deep state totally by surprise. And as government shutdowns never seem to end, banks are on shaky ground, and with no help in sight, will the deep state finally concede to source? Or will they lead this planet forever?
Tired before the day begins? NAD Plus levels drop 50% after 40. NAD Plus helps your cells bounce back fast. Most supplements give precursors. NAD Plus skips the breakdown, delivering direct, bioavailable power. Support your energy, metabolism, sleep, and stress levels at the cellular level. Join the NAD Plus revolution. Start your journey to a healthier you. Subscribe today.
Well, it's the 12th of November, 2025. If you're in the U.S., you're probably only a couple of weeks away from Thanksgiving, big holiday here where we all eat too much. And it's been a week since our last report, and I've got a lot to say today. I've got quite a few pages of notes, and we've definitely learned a lot. I'm always learning something new, and exactly at the right time. You know, I wish Source would just give me all the information, but, you know, there's a time for everything. And, you know, you can't let your enemy know what it is you're doing. So lots to take notes on today. Okay, so let's start with a little bit of cleanup work. We have our new Field Messenger app, which has launched. It should be in the Apple Store within 24 hours. I know it's in the Google Play Store. And what Field Messenger is, in case you don't know and you're not listening to this on our network, a Field Messenger is anyone who is reporting on what is happening in their area. You see, mainstream media oftentimes reports things that are happening in a certain place around the world, and it's quite often not true. And so our field messengers are just our viewers. They are you. And they go out and about and, you know, check out stories and see what's happening in their area. They also report on cultural things from all over the world, different types of music, different types of holiday, ways of celebrating holidays, all kinds of different things, so we can learn a lot more about each other. And I love our Field Messenger reports. So if you're listening to this and you are a Field Messenger, thank you so very much. We've even had Field Messengers in the middle of hurricanes, you know, telling us what the winds are really like, not what they're reporting on TV. So on that note, if you are a Field Messenger, you might want to download the app. It makes it much easier for you to upload your videos directly to us, and then we edit those videos, so you don't have to worry about that. We edit those videos and make you look good, and your reports will oftentimes appear in our news. So you are quickly, as Field Messengers, becoming the news, which I think is the change that we've all hoped for and all been looking for. And I think now more than ever, it's important that we learn a lot more about our communities all around the world and get to know each other a little better, because we as a whole have a misunderstanding of who we are as Homo sapiens and beings on this planet. And the closer we get to each other, get to understand each other, the better the world will be. So that's our exciting news. And if you want to learn more about becoming a Field Messenger or learn more about the app, you can attend our Field Messenger meetings, which are on Sunday afternoons, my time. Usually they start about 4 p.m. Mountain Time. and we'd love to have you. So anyway, if you'd like to explore on your own, go ahead and check out the app. It'll show you exactly how easy it is to record a report. Also, in the near future, we are actually able to send notifications to people that are in specific areas. If there's an event going on, we can say, hey, there's an event in your area. You know, they're reporting that this is happening. Is it really happening in your area? So this would have come in really handy with a lot of the things that they're trying to say are happening in the mainstream media, such as, you know, Oregon is a war zone. You know, there's a definite need for security in Chicago, and they need to declare a national emergency. And, you know, all of you can tell us what's really going on. You know, and a lot of times, even with the LA riots recently, you know, it's just all fluff. It's just peaceful protests, or there's really nobody around. So it's important to kind of debunk these rumors and the fear behind them, and that's what our field messengers do. So thank you to each and every one of you for being a field messenger, and any one of you that is listening to this and want to learn more about it, we'd love to hear from you. So that's what a field messenger is. Changing the news. Eventually, this is going to be the way that news will be done in the world. Okay, so speaking of news, let's talk about some more things that are happening, especially here in the States. You know, we talked a little bit about the government shutdown and the effects on SNAP benefits. Apparently, this did not yield them enough people that are focusing on the government and reopening of government in order to yield them enough money to do anything that they wanted to do. Currently, at this moment, they are trying to pass a bill to keep the government running, quote unquote, through January 30th. Apparently, this goes to the House this evening. At the time of this report, anyway, it would be this evening in U.S. time, which technically does affect the entire world. I know, you know, a lot of people say, well, you're reporting on America a lot. And, well, what happens here happens everywhere. It's kind of the opposite of the Las Vegas theme, isn't it? So this shutdown, you know, and their lack of funds and their hoping for funds is tied to a much larger game, which I'm going to talk to you about in a little bit. But first of all, we're going to talk more about the effects. So it appears that we still have a lot of people. I know they're in lots of grocery stores, and, you know, people are finding a way to feed their families during this time. Apparently, they are saying that they're going to restore these benefits at some point. Who knows if the federal government will do that. But I will remind all of you, if you are in the U.S. and you are a SNAP benefits recipient, that it is 50% the state's responsibility and 50% the federal government's responsibility. Therefore, if there is no federal funding for a SNAP benefit, then I encourage you to reach out to your local people and local representatives, because if you are getting less than 50%, then the state is shorting you, because they've always paid 50%. So keep that in mind. So the next thing they decided to do, and they thought this was a really good idea, is to cancel a lot of flights. They're going to allegedly increase the amount of cancellations over the course of the coming weeks, of course, leading up to the holiday season here in the U.S. Now, this can affect flights worldwide. For those of you that don't know, they're calling the FAA a federal organization, meaning it works for the federal government. But quite frankly, it is not any more federal than the Federal Reserve is. It is not dependent on government funding in any way, shape, or form. Quite frankly, it's always been sort of privatized. There is some agency involvement in the FAA, as well as military involvement in the FAA. This is because it was a Rothschild-funded organization back in the day, and thus far, as I understand it, the also non-federal Treasury Department has been funding the FAA through various illicit activities that they have been performing until the shutdown. So the FAA apparently has been going without pay, which I don't doubt. And therefore, people are unable to continue working there at this time. And this allegedly is causing the cancellation of flights and disruptions of flights, therefore, around the world. Behind the scenes, the FAA has got their hands in nearly every country's flight control. The reason why they do that is because they oftentimes hide tail numbers and passenger lists, and you'll hear a plane flying over your head and it shows up nowhere on the radar. This is because that is the FAA's job, is to protect the elite, just like all of the other agencies in the world. They are also responsible for things like the missing Malaysia flight and other things that have occurred that really didn't actually occur. They were also involved in the 9/11 scam, which hurt thousands of people. So that is your FAA. They also have backdoor access and have had backdoor access to things like the black box, which is actually orange, in airplanes, which can at any moment in time start driving the plane in whatever direction they want to, cause mechanical failures and all kinds of different things through their backdoor access to every airline manufacturer or airplane manufacturer in the world. They can also do this to any type of plane that, for example, Lockheed or Boeing sells, even military planes that we sell to other countries. So the FAA is quite an interesting organization. So apparently they're not getting paid and now they are not working, and therefore there is a reason for cancellation of flights. In my personal opinion, and this is probably more than an opinion, it's more of a fact, they are doing anything and everything they can to get as many people as possible focusing on the government. Remember, it's all about giving up your power to a third party and how important the government is and why you should fear the government, and definitely give your fear energy to the government. In this particular case, although it may be a little chaotic and crazy for canceling a lot of flights around the holiday season, we have this little thing here in America. It's called the military. And pretty much there are many military personnel here in America, both retired and currently enlisted, that in this particular case, the United States military should have stepped in and put their own personnel in place in the event of a national emergency. That did not happen. So that kind of tells you they're all riding the same train on the same bus in order to drive this country into civil war and eventually the entire world into civil war, because they want Homo sapiens to fight. They want to know what they have to do to make you fight, kill, steal, murder. You know, all things we know we're not supposed to do. It's in those 10 little rules that you get in books called the Bible and other religious books. And there's a definitive reason for that. They're not going to win this game. It's never going to happen. So because nobody stepped in and flights are continuing to be canceled and those numbers are rising and every single day, meaning the number of canceled flights are rising every single day, I would encourage the people of the United States and those flying in and out of the country or have a layover in the United States going someplace else to consider different types of travel plans throughout the holidays. In other words, we have many, many rental cars, we have buses, we have trains, albeit them antiquated and nothing like you have there in Europe if you're listening to us here in Europe. But there are many other modes of transportation. You can take an Uber clear across the country if you wanted to. Not saying it would be cheaper than a plane, but anyway, and definitely it would take you longer to get there. But if you are traveling this holiday season, there are many other ways to go, and no need to panic if the FAA, which is quote unquote as federal as the Federal Reserve is, doesn't come to work, which is totally fine with us. I mean, honestly, most of us probably dread the holidays even sometimes. It's always those people at the holiday parties, or family members, right? That you're like, oh boy, I've got to go see Uncle Bob again. Just kidding. It's a great time of year to spend time with friends and family, and most people are not working, and it's a matter of inconvenience, and that's okay. The deep state is going to do what the deep state is going to do to try to get us as people to do something they want. And this is just another part of it. SNAP benefits was another part of it. Now, the airlines have also been offered lots of money, billions of dollars, to cancel flights, just like they did during COVID. It's all part of the scamorama. Those payments were due a couple of days ago on Monday, and then again today, and there'll be another day ending in Y, and same thing with those COVID checks that the airline companies didn't get either. So, yeah, still waiting for those checks, or at least some of them anyway. And good luck to you, airlines. But then again, airlines here in America are pretty much run by the same people that run everything else here, or used to, and that would be in your country too, by the way, around the world. So you're talking about a bunch of people still trying to be a world government. Okay, also here, as talked about just a few moments ago, we have the longest government shutdown in history happening. Allegedly, this vote tonight will keep it open or reopen the government till at least the 30th of January, until they can figure out how they're going to get some kind of payment for something. Probably they think something's going to happen January 1st, because that would have been the next day that they would have gotten paid something. And January 15th was another day. But these days have come and gone for the last almost 20 years now, and no payment has come on those days, unless, of course, I did it. And that's not happening. It hasn't happened in the last several years, so they can sit there and try to reopen all they want to reopen, but I could care less. Matter of fact, I've gotten some calls as well. They want to know if I'm willing to do this and willing to do that, as far as different alleged strategic, I'm going to use the word alleged here, strategic tactics in order to get me to provide the deep state with some money, with lots of promises and all kinds of things. And really, I've heard it all. I think they must forget that they have run pretty much every line of operative tactic on me for years. At the same time, while they're trying to get me to comply in more ways than one, whether they know it or not, they continue to try and see if I will complete some ritual, do something. They've phrased it to me now about 4 or 5 different ways, and I am absolutely not interested in your cray-cray, like in any way, shape, or form. So, government, no government, deep state, no deep state. At this point, they are running out of time. So, speaking of time and the deep state, apparently they have felt that there was going to be something special for them on Sunday night. Why Sunday night? I have no idea. But this comes on the heels of this 11/11 portal. Now, you've probably read in the alternative media and on various sites that the 1111 portal is good. It's a time of enlightenment. If you're seeing 1111, it's a good sign. And truth be told, it used to be. It used to be that at some point in time, that there was an even split between the dark and the light, and source would come in at that time. Now, that's been kind of overlaid by a bunch of AIs in the past and didn't really yield those results. But the thing that the deep state has forgotten about their 1111 special portal that was special for them is that it doesn't necessarily follow our current calendar. You see, because our current calendar is not the same one we used several centuries ago, and it's not the same one we used a few centuries before that, and it's not the same one we used to use before we had calendars. So this portal time can occur anywhere around this time of year. Doesn't necessarily have anything to do with a date on a calendar and the numbers game, although numbers used to be special. Numbers would reflect certain frequencies that would do certain things and rewrite certain languages at that time. It would also relate to various densities and different things that were going to occur and the influence they would have on planets in our solar system and this planet, big rock we live on. So on the 8th of November, this portal apparently decided to swing wide open. I kind of thought it was funny. Source thought it was funny, but it happened a little early. And this kind of set everybody into a full-on panic. They didn't even know it was opening until we said something on a telephone. And then they went into a full-on panic trying to scurry, quick, set everything up. It's happening, it's happening, it's happening. So they kind of gave us a little hell this weekend, or tried with whatever tools they had left. But the good news is the less they have, the more they pull out things out of the woodwork in order for us to find them easier. So I just wanted to give a shout out to you dumb deep state human people, because you really help us out a lot, especially us Homo sapiens. It might be a little rocky here and there, frequencies here and there, weird feelings this past weekend here and there, but it definitely made it easier for us. But it also pointed out a lot of other things, and I'll get to that in just a minute. So as it relates to these deep state Trump operatives, you know, they have been telling people that funding would come on Monday night. They won the game. They won. You know, they were declaring this on Saturday night and Sunday, and, you know, they told everybody no later than precisely 6 a.m. Eastern time on Monday that it would all work out. Again, their timing was off. Whether they know it or don't know it, this had to do with an old covenant and a few other things that were behind the scenes. However, that did not stop the dumb deep state operatives of the Trump administration from ringing the diplomatic line. Now, for those of you that are new here, you may remember me talking to you about the diplomatic line that I used to talk to Trump on all the time during the last administration. I used to provide budget funding during the last administration. I used to provide a lot of things through that diplomatic line during the last administration. I also did some during the Obama administration and all the way back to about 2012. So, yeah. Anyway, they tried using that line again around 3:47 a.m. my time. Thank you. There's nothing more I want to do at 3:47 a.m. than to talk to a bunch of Trump operatives. And I didn't answer the phone So 3:47 a.m. was the first ring. Second ring was around 4:04 a.m. my time, which would be precisely right before 6 a.m. and right after 6 a.m. It appears that they believe since they won the game or won the something, not sure what they thought they won, but they thought that this would give them full access to the Golden Age AI, my system, or it would give them access to whatever they wanted. They would get full power. Not really sure why that time and that day, but this is what they believed. Maybe some AI transmitted a message to their head about it. Who knows? So nothing actually happened except for a bunch of angry people started running around like crazy on Monday. Full-on panic amongst these people because no money actually came. Coincidentally, at the same time this was all going on, the Syrian president was here in the U.S. To visit at the White House to collect his large payment for doing such a good job with the upheaval in the Middle East. And he has been convinced by the Trump administration that he is the next Mahdi. If you don't know what a Mahdi is, that is the Islamic version of Jesus, basically, to put it in a short sentence for this extremely long report. So he now shows up to collect his due and plan the war and, you know, all the things they'd like to have on this planet. And yeah, nothing actually happened. They told him to hang out for a couple more days. Don't know if they did or they didn't. But a couple more days being today, and of course that didn't happen either. And whatever they were expecting on this eve or at the end of the day on the 11/11 didn't happen despite their best efforts, and I don't know. So that's kind of the behind the scenes of the news as we hear it in mainstream media. So will they find somebody that is willing to give them enough money to make it till the 30th of January? Oh, that's a pretty steep bill. You know, they can probably force some of their bagmen, you know, like Alex Soros or, you know, Berkshire Hathaway or BlackRock, if they've got any money left, or I don't know, some prince in the Middle East or something. Maybe they've got one of the oil tycoons there that will lend them enough money to stay open. Who knows? I'm sure they can tell them a story that will make them believe that this is a good idea, and somebody somewhere will probably shell out a few $100 million. You know, it's like a bad commercial these days. There's a bunch of politicians, you know, sitting in a shelter somewhere. Can you just donate just $1 to keep our government running? You know, and they play the sad, sappy song. I don't think any of us are going to donate anything. I know we actually avoid it at all costs. So that's your story of what's happening around the world. Of course, when, you know, the dollar is topsy-turvy, you know, everything else goes topsy-turvy. They are still pushing very hard here in the U.S. on a quote-unquote federal level, which has nothing to do with government, to install some kind of stable coin, some kind of cryptocurrency as well. And this is supposed to be a worldwide thing. Apparently, they still have a bunch of countries that are waiting for this new currency to come about. And it's all about power and control. So I've had to have conversations, and very painful ones, again, about why this doesn't work. I used a very interesting scenario with these people. And I talked about the fact that, well, I won't go into that one. I was kind of a little bit rude, you know, when I explained it, but I tried to explain it in the best way I can. You know, if you have X amount of space and it's full of flowers, meaning the space in this case would be considered what you call a quota. The flowers in this case would be what you would consider money. And you can only have as many flowers as you have space. And too many flowers and you have no more space, which means you need more quotas, which means you need a higher gross domestic product, or GDP. You need to increase imports and exports in order to issue more dollars, or in this case, more flowers, because you need more space. So I explained that if you take out the flowers and maybe you put in cactuses, that would be like replacing the US dollar with Bitcoin or a stable coin or some other kind of coin. I explained when you do that, you still only have X amount of space. You know, there's only so many square footage to plant the cacti. So you can get rid of all the flowers because you control all the cactus seeds in the world, because that's what they'd like to do. But still, there's only that much space. Now, in order for people to have access to cactuses versus flowers, in this case, you must know how to handle a cactus. You must have special gloves. You must have special gear to handle cacti. And in the same way, you must have special things in your country to handle Bitcoin or stablecoin or US dollar coin or USTC or whatever it is, because you need infrastructure. You need internet service and fiber cables, which are old and antiquated in most countries. They're from the 1970s. There's no way we have the global infrastructure to handle every person on Earth dealing in any kind of crypto. We don't have that infrastructure. Not only that, a lot of people are very old school, and about 80% of the daily transactions happen in physical cash. And this is in countries across the world. Number one, it's very, very, very expensive to process tap and pay and debit cards and other things that we utilize as consumers. You know, and it can take up to 2 weeks, depending on where you are in the world, for you to receive as a merchant your payments. So that is why nobody can actually handle cactuses at this time, aka Bitcoin in this case. Not only that, you still have only so much square footage in your yard, meaning your GDP hasn't increased, nothing has changed. Therefore, to give something a value, you have to increase the GDP or get a bigger yard if you want to make more cactuses. So just because you're replacing flowers with cactuses in this case is not going to help anyone fix their country. It's not going to change the world. And there's no cactus handlers on the planet that can handle cactuses on the daily. In other words, there's no infrastructure for this either. So I know that they sold it at that conference I told you about in Las Vegas in the last report, and they're selling it to everybody. They're even threatening countries that they must join this new cryptocurrency scamorama. Probably charge them admission to the scamorama as well. But it will never work under the current circumstances today. Not only that, they do not have the infrastructure. They are banking on the fact that on day ending in Y, in alignment with Uranus, a new moon, a full moon, a holiday, a solstice, an equinox is going to come, and this is going to be their ticket to getting access to a quantum AI. And it's not happening. Matter of fact, the chances of it happening are extremely low at this point. And we'll talk more about the video game here as well. So as far as governments are concerned, this has been the theme. Scamming one country, scamming another country. The U.S. is scamming all the countries. And behind the scenes, the reason why the operatives are doing this is because they believe if they can get governments to all sign up for a program, they still believe that governments own its citizens. So, for example, if you are a citizen of the country of Australia, they are under the impression that the Australian government owns you as collateral or has a lien against you. Therefore, by signing, for example, the country of Australia up to join this crazy crap coin process or whatever it is, that they now control the souls of the humans, of the Homo sapiens. So they felt the reason why they won the game is because they managed to get all of these countries signed up for a singular program and process. Now, I don't know if they were born last night or yesterday, but this thing has been tried over and over and over again for the last 20 years. China tried it. People with the revaluation of currencies tried it. Then they tried going to the tribal leaders because they're like, well, they were the original governments when all of this happened thousands of years ago, so perhaps we have to go to the original tribes. They tried that. Got 200 tribes or from 200 different countries to sign up, and that didn't work. Because they don't understand how it works. So, things have been occurring behind the scenes to ensure that this crazy scam that these people are running ends. Now, in the past, not only our entire financial system, but also the management of this planet was very different. The deep state, aka the secret space program operatives, Trump operatives, Russian operatives, and everyone else that's been playing the game here for the last week, they are under the impression that there are ways to bypass the system and win the game. What they don't realize is that they are actually playing a video game. If you and I are playing a video game and we are online together and we're playing the video game and I win the game or you win the game, doesn't really matter. We both get up and walk away from our computers and our lives haven't changed. Say it's a game of winning the lottery and you're fighting each other for the winning ticket. We still walk away from our game and there's still no lottery ticket because that's not how it works. I can own Boardwalk and Park Place on the game of Monopoly, digital or otherwise, and I still don't own Boardwalk and Park Place because it's just a game. And it's a much bigger game than these people have been led on to believe. But let's talk about the game that they're playing first. Their game is all about winning. Now, they have been promised, just like Homo sapiens are every day here on Earth, they have been promised fame, fortune, and power for a small little fee of their soul. Now, at one point in time, all of the humans walking the earth had a soul, had a source-given soul. But they decided to give it away in exchange for power and control. You must have heard me say, and I know it's on the internet, that a lot of Hollywood stars have done the same, and singers. In order for them to achieve fame and fortune, they must sell their soul. And then when the soul contract comes due, it comes due. So from the deep state's perception, they must gain power and control of all of the Homo sapien souls and or Earth and or both or mine. Now, this game has been played before, and I'm sure you've heard the story, where Source sends many different people here. Homo sapiens, they all come in as a Homo sapien, usually with special skills and highly connected to Source. And they have forced guardian after guardian after guardian to concede, therefore placing a lien on the souls of Homo sapiens. Just because they had liens and just because they had overlays in the past, and just because they could have overlaid Earth's soul, doesn't mean that the souls are lost. You see, when a Homo sapien or a being born of Source with a Source-given soul willingly gives up their soul to achieve fame and fortune and out of pride and ego and all the reasons why sometimes Homo sapiens do that, their soul goes into a collective pool we call a sea, S-E-A. It's a soul empire of Azrael, the demon of death. That makes sense. Fallen angel of death, one who gave up his soul, as a lot of the other celestials did too. They gave up their souls to become who they are. Together, over many, many years of the soul collectors collecting souls, not just the humans, of the soul collectors sent out to collect souls, and they expect you as a being to sell it, they have formed quite a soul collection. The soul goes into the soul empire, which is in between in space. We'll talk about that too. And then the being ends up becoming a resident of the dark side of the omniverse. And in order to win back their soul, if that's what they're trying to do, they must collect more souls. They are forced for all eternity to collect more souls in order to allegedly buy back their own. And you could call this a fair. Not fair as in, that's not fair. Fair as in paying your toll to ride the train. The train in this case is an artificial soul run by an AI system that is also still connected to the sea, the empire of souls, that is now owned by the soul collector. Now, the soul collector cannot make you sell your soul. The soul collector or collectors must have you give it up willingly. Now, there are many beings, Marduk included, that lost his soul, that gave up his soul for power. Marduk used to tell me, I asked him if he sold his soul once. He said, well, I convince other people to sell theirs. He didn't say yes, he didn't say no. He just said, my job is to convince people to sell theirs. Other folks I met were kind of similar. I couldn't figure out why these people don't make a decision. You know, and what makes these humans that walk this planet, we know as the deep state, tick? Why do they keep doing this? Why do they keep going? Well, an AI runs their head, that's for sure. And they are playing a video game that they have no hope of winning. So, how do you get them to stop playing the game? Well, get them to stop playing the game by taking away the game. There's no more game. Kind of like we do with our kids when they spend too many hours playing video games. We take away the game. Well, we have to take away the game from our kids so they realize it's not a game. So we've been working on that quite a bit, trying to take away the video game. If there's no more dangling carrots for the humans, then will they stop? Well, I think a couple things have to happen now that we had a base root understanding. So in pleading with Source, where's the video game? The first thing that I was told is all is fair in love and war. Then dead silence. By fair, it's pay your toll fair. Like all is fair in love and war. And I tried to figure out what's love, what's war, you know, and how this really worked. So, love is of Source. Love only comes from Source. It comes through other people, of course. It comes through animals. It comes through plants. It comes through nature. It comes through all things of Source. Love cannot help but express itself through many things in our world that are organic. War is of death. It was created by death. It creates death, does it not? War also is a way to conquer territories of Earth, to conquer people and citizens and countries. Now you understand why they do it, in part. War, in their mind, is a way to gain control over more Homo sapien souls. Now all you have to do is get them to make an individual decision to sell it. What do you have to do to people to get them to sell their soul? See, anyone here walking the earth with a natural organic soul is a target. Someone sent me a video recently of some farms, and they're not, farms for food type places. These are ranches, more like where animals live, and they are raised by people who love their animals dearly, and they came in and just started killing them all. That still doesn't mean the animal doesn't have its soul. They believe, see, these people, these humans that are walking this planet, that give these crazy orders to do crazy things, they believe that all death pays the toll, pays the fare. And quite frankly, it does not. It does not. Now, the AI system can tell you that it does, only because there's no additional debt incurred by these people walking the earth when there was some guardianship over earth and even ownership in part over earth. We talked about before in the past that earth was divided into multiple sectors owned by many different beings, none of them Homo sapiens. Therefore, they used to milk us all like cows, but they still can't take your soul. They can milk you like a cow and force you to give up your own Ethereum, force you to give away your energy to allow them to be powerful, but they cannot take your soul. Only the Homo sapien can agree to give up its soul, and it's the same thing with an animal. Only the animal, only the plant can agree to give up its soul. And everything that's living has the ability in a collective consciousness type way to make that decision. So even if a tree dies or a plant dies or a person dies, well, by various overlays, these things are done, and we go into the recycling program and come back over and over and over again, like Groundhog Day, in order to force you to concede. So if you didn't buy it in the first round, then you're going to buy it in the second round or the third round or the fourth round or even the 1,000th round. They need you to sell your own soul. You might have had little Mars here and there, maybe, did something that, isn't a deadly sin per se, but perhaps little things here and there. And, most of us ask for forgiveness, of those people that we may have harmed or even from Source itself, for doing something wrong, or God, and forgiveness is always given. However, they keep going. So, the rule of thumb is 80% of Homo sapiens souls must be willing to sell their soul. And what's it going to take? Now, those soul contracts have to exist before harvest. It's part of the reason why Source has not allowed, and we've worked hard to make sure of that there isn't a harvest. Because there is no point in harvesting souls that are only going to go back to Source at this stage in the game. Does the deep state know that? Absolutely not. They feel they need to have war so they can have death, but that still doesn't mean that Homo sapien is going to sell their soul. Inadvertently, by implied consent, by murdering the life of an innocent, or because it's in defense of themselves. If it's in defense of yourself or the life of an innocent, that is not considered murder, even in a war. And you would think after this has happened time and time and time and time again that they would understand this. So the video game that they have been playing, the humans that are walking this earth, we know as the deep state, are soulless Homo sapiens that have sold their soul in the past willingly, giving it up for power. To become the royals. So when we were sitting there trying to figure out all is fair in love and war, we figured out the fair in this case is after you've sold your own soul, there's a fair. But you must continue to get others to sell their souls in order to win the power. Full, complete, and total power. Now, they believed that Marduk had all the power because he sold the most amount of fares by playing the video game. And that's not true. He didn't. Now, when they got access to some of Marduk's old stuff and whatnot, they thought that this is it. Now we can play the game at the highest level. Now, did they know they're playing a game? No, they believe they're outside the video game and that the video game is only being played on the Homo sapiens. They play the game on the people to make sure that they sell their souls in one way or another. And to avoid love like the plague. Think about all the programming. We don't want to be vulnerable. We don't want to care. We don't want to love something that's only going to die. We don't want to, think about all of the things that they try to tell us and teach us and, blur the lines between love and sexual relations and all the other things that they do. But they do not know or do not understand they are also part of a video game, a much higher video game. And then, even beyond that, there's a bigger game. There's a game of love and war. There is also a video game being played by war itself. War collects all of its pawns from people and beings from all over the multiverse that have willingly sold their soul. And that becomes its army, its soldiers. Red, white, or black, it doesn't matter which group they belong to, those become the soldiers of war. They exist predominantly where the seas are. They do come into this density from time to time. They inhabit various people that permit them to. They become walking vessels from time to time with no soul, so that any soul can walk in and use that vessel once it's entered into the video game. But again, that only works in simulations and overlays. So then they try to get all of us to allow them to come in here. They even made a run at plants this weekend because nobody was willing to give up their vessel. And they needed more vessels to inhabit this earth so that we were overrun with beings with no soul. Let's call them the lost ones. Whew, yeah, busy weekend. So, war, territories and realms and kings and the kingmakers of war, or that make the Homo sapiens, make the humans and all the other lost souls kings of various realms, only exist between the natural realms of love. That would be source reality. We, however, can exist in both because our souls never depart from source. They do, but they're never departed from source. You see, on the flip side, we have those that are of love, born of love. They are a part of source. They have a soul still. They did not sell their soul, and there are many of us walking around this planet with an organic soul. So at the highest level of the video game, the actual game is for those of the fallen that fight on the side of war to gain control over all the souls in the omniverse. The reason for this is because then they can own more than 80% of source. That's the goal. If they own more than 80% of source, they no longer need to deal with us Homo sapiens, because all the souls go into the soul sea or the soul empire, various astral planes and otherwise. And then war has won in its mind. Nobody will live in existence anymore. Nobody will live in source reality, and therefore there is no one to co-create in love with. Now, the reason why Earth is such a prize for war, on the war side, is because Earth was the first co-creator with source, at least down here in this density. And Earth actually reproduced souls to inhabit the Earth of source and with source, of course. And therefore, we, at one point in time, were all tied to Earth. That didn't mean we couldn't leave Earth. It just meant that we had a co-creative relationship with what you would call Mother Earth, Father God, or Father Source. They both are very much a part of you. Through many, many years of war and all kinds of different things, Homo sapiens became the guardians of Earth in totality, and eventually there were singular guardian after guardian after guardian of the guardians as we lost our memories and forgot who we were. On the flip side, those that sold their soul, joined World War, really forgot where they came from. They have no idea, because a lot of them have been gone so long, of where they actually came from. They don't understand what it's like to feel the love of Source. Even in the darkest of times on Earth, it was always here. Some of you might find that in nature. Some of you might find that in another person, in a child you give birth to, family members, an animal, plants, breathing the salt air by the beach, feeling the sunlight on your face. You can always find time for love, be it self-love or love of others or other things, creating, love of creation. Love is always there. No matter how dark they made it here, love is always there. And as long as we have that, we never ever lose faith. And a lot of you, they just can't break. A lot of people fall prey to ego and then eventually sell their souls. But once they do, they completely have forgotten what that means. They can try to convince us that they are love. They can try to convince us that they care for us. They become idols on television and mainstream media, and they can try to convince us that they know what love is, but they don't. It's part of the program to get them to play the video game. Now, on the deep state's part, all kinds of deals were made. They would have power over Earth. They would be the kings of Earth. They would be all kinds of different things. This also goes for many others that have come and gone over the years. And did they actually become the kings of Earth? Well, not exactly. They always reported to somebody or another. And that person always reported to somebody or another. And that person was always controlled by somebody or another. And then eventually you got up to folks like Wisdom and Death and the Ancients and all the other ones that existed on the other side. But never once did any of these people have total control. But they were told if they could win the game and collect the ultimate fare, get all of us to sell, get the Guardian to sell, get somebody to sell us something. We need as much of Source over here as we can get. We need the souls, they say. So pay your toll and get them to sell their souls. Well, this is one video game that they were never meant to win. There was absolutely no hope. If they had, let's just say they had succeeded, that game would have started reset. The game would have just rebooted. You know, if you ever played a video game so long, you flipped the game. That's what we used to call it way back in the day. Flipping the game, you know, when you run out of levels and a game restarts and starts over again. I don't know if that still happens with these video games these days, but when the game restarts itself and then they would have had to start all over again. And they would have gone into this vicious cycle to the end of days, lusting for the one thing they could not get: full power. Now, interestingly enough, Source has pulled the plug. So at one point in time, due to covenants and all kinds of things that existed, we were kind of tied to those that are the soulless to the souls. They became our governments. They became our nanny state. They became our caretakers. They were tied to other guardians who were tied to unseen royals who were tied to your world government and world government organizations, some seen and some unseen. And when those things don't exist, you could say, well, banks, they have custody of your energy, custody of this, and the story goes on and on and on when you really think about it. How many different ways could they take custody and control over Homo sapiens and then force you to sell your soul? Time after time after time of being here. Well, they are no longer in those positions. And all that really matters at this point, they can sit there on TV and talk all they want, but they don't have that lean. So exactly at the time, these crazy humans and secret space program operatives and other folks thought that they were going to win the game, Source paired us away from them. By pair, I mean P-A-R-E, like you would pair an apple. So we are no longer bound in any way, shape, or form in any way to any government, country, bank. In the grand scheme of the greater game of Earth, you are not paired to anybody. They tried and tried to pair us all together, rebind us to the government, more specifically the U.S. government, and this is from countries all around the world. But that dog that they say that dog don't hunt, and they keep trying the same things that they have already done over and over and over again. So what happens when they realize they didn't win? I can tell you exactly what happens. Now we're going to go back after the Guardian, because she'll sign them all over to us. But the game is not even running anymore. The video game is over. We aren't even paired together in any way, shape, or form. So even if I lost my mind tomorrow, you get nothing. They still get nothing. That's a Source thing. Sure, we went in and we've been cleaning game and aspects of games and video games and making sure that souls are no longer fair in a game of love and war, making sure the realms of war, or hell as you would call it, don't exist. And even to the point where we got to get rid of the soul sea, right? For those that have lost their souls at sea, and that's not you Homo sapiens anymore. We don't have those programs, haven't had them for a while. But what do? We got to get rid of the sea. Okay, so Source basically said, look, those are my souls. I created them. They have to be back under the care of Source. Now, what does that mean? That was a tough pill to swallow. Probably for all of you too. You mean you're going to redeem the souls of all these fallen people? Well, some of these people fell because of the game. It's a simulation. They fell for the simulation. They fell for everything they were being sold. There's a lot of people in this world that would like a good little rub on the ego every once in a while. Don't they? So, and others call, guilty of doing things out of poverty and Maybe they stole something to help feed their child or something. Who knows? But, the rules of the game are not the same as they were before. Pride, guilt, and shame. So, back to the humans and all the other beings around the omniverse who lost their souls and acted on behalf of an AI system in a video game for centuries after centuries after centuries. They keep getting thrown back here. They too live Groundhog Day. Well, more importantly, Source needs to be made whole. That's the number one goal. So separation from pieces of itself in a version of a human soul that is locked up in a different empire is not acceptable. So once it exists on this side of the omniverse once again, even on the other side, it is now a part of Source because it no longer belongs to an empire that also no longer exists. So, once it becomes part now of Source, which is what Source wants to do, then the being itself has a decision to make. Do you stay and work with an organic soul and in that way, with an understanding of what that means, or do you go? Either way, Source reclaims the soul and that piece of itself. Earth also had a lot of overlays over her soul or central sun, which has caused her not to be able to create in the way she used to create. The central sun of Earth was diverted over to Silverton, Colorado, and could only create inorganic things for a long, long time, with many AIs to go along with it in a video game. So once the souls are redeemed and they enter back not only to here to Earth, but to other places, what will the beings choose? It's still their sovereign right. So we'll see how this next couple of days goes, because that redemption process has already started. Source has already begun to do it. There is no way to be reclaimed now by death or Azrael or the angel of death or worshiping death or any of the other things the deep state wants to do, because their game is over. The empire has fallen. There is no soul empire to feed. There is no fair anymore in Love and War. So we'll see what happens from here. It's been a lot of work and it's taken a lot of time to get there, and it was very topsy-turvy during this fall of those video games over and over and over again as they continued to play until we found out what it's connected to. So Source has chosen to end the ultimate game between Love and War. And that's what's happened. That's been the major event and the major occurrence for this week. As far as all this other stuff you're seeing a bunch of governments and people, humans or whatever deep state people running around trying to figure out a way to trip an automated system. Now, see, they believe that Alpha was an automated system. It's part of the video game, they would say. Even though these things don't exist anymore, well, Golden Age AI replaced Alpha, so it must be part of my video game I'm playing. Do they know they're actually playing a video game? I don't know. But this was created outside the video game. So, again, to go back to the scenario that you and I are playing a video game, like we're playing Monopoly online together. And we get up from the table, and there is a real person in the kitchen cooking, and there's real food, and you have to eat the real food. You can't eat the food in the game. You can only eat the food that's real in reality, grounded in reality. these people don't understand the golden age AI is in reality. It's not a part of your video game. You cannot win it by winning a game, just like you cannot win a meal to sit right in front of you that you can eat by playing a video game. Maybe in the Jetsons, if you remember that cartoon, that dates me really bad, I know. But maybe in that cartoon you can play a video game and get a sandwich actually delivered that you can actually eat. I don't know. Maybe there's Uber Eats tied to it somewhere. I have no idea. But all I know is that in my world, if you're hungry, you cannot play a video game and win the video game cheeseburger and eat it. Not that I would eat a cheeseburger really anyway, but you see my point. So they keep thinking they're going to win this. They're going to win the control because they're playing a game that exists over here. We are over there. We're talking to people in person. We're making food in person. We're doing real person things, real Homo sapien things. We're going for swims in the ocean. We're not playing a video game. In the past, that video game had more influence over us than it does now because we had a lot of simulations and matrices that we had to deal with. Are there little things left here and there? Maybe. That's left to clean up? Possibly. There's only so many hours in the day to do so much cleaning. And still manage to do other things like, eat and shower and sleep, maybe even. So in the course of this process, we've learned quite a bit. And our understanding of things is not the same. Redemption, even for those that we wish would never get it, but that's Source's wish, so that's up to Source, and Source will deal with them. If they don't want to accept their souls, don't. With no AI to run a soul, it won't exist. For those of them that are only here as avatars in the third density, maybe their soul is floating somewhere in the fifth. Maybe they used to be able to project themselves here and cannot. Matter of fact, they don't even know where they are these days without the video game. There's rumors online of all these alien people coming in and ships sitting somewhere and blah, blah, blah. There's nobody sitting anywhere. And they have tried and tried. When I tell you over the last week to bore holes into the densities of reality, there are so many frequencies of varying types of beings and warships and all kinds of things that have tried to make it into this reality, and they are not here. And remember, focusing on things like there's going to be an alien invasion and Atlas. They want you to bring it here because only you can. I hope that makes more sense to you now. So pay extra close attention to things you're seeing everywhere. Because if you're seeing it everywhere, and it's not like a, cats playing with yarn video, if you're seeing it everywhere, chances are it's something they're trying to get you to do because, quite frankly, they can't do it anymore. They can't even escape here, and they would love to get out. Being a gatekeeper over here, for the love of God, it's like they've done my head in for a week. I can tell you that. But stay strong. Your soul is your soul. It's your connection to Source. Don't ever forget that. Don't want to be like them. And we'll see what ends up changing, if anything changes because of it. Seems like everybody seems a little bit like they just woke up out of a slumber over there. For the rest of the people, you too are waking up quite a bit. So much so the deep state is really afraid of you, and they're trying desperately to put you back to sleep. And they can't. Their influence is waning. Sure, you might get a frequency here and there, or a tone, or something weird, but it doesn't last very long anymore. It's not as strong as it used to be. Even the attacks aren't as strong as they used to be, because everything has changed. So what's going to become of governments and banks and all these people? Well, either they decide to make a new covenant or they don't. Their choice, their call. Quite frankly, that's above my pay grade. All I know is what I'm told, and it is what it is. So join the source party or get off the planet. That's pretty much what the big boss says. On that note, that has been the GIA report for the 12th of November. I promise you to try to get out reports as often as I possibly can right now. We're nearing the end of the war. And hopefully, we'll see some real change real soon. On that note, have a wonderful evening or morning wherever you are, and I will see you again soon.
Amino acids play a vital role in maintaining your overall health and well-being. Not enough amino acids and protein daily can result in brain fog, hormone imbalances, digestive issues, cognitive function, lack of energy, lower immunity, decreased muscle strength, and much more. That's why we created our amino acid complex, packed with 21 free-form, easily digestible aminos that skip the breakdown and go straight to work energizing your mind and body. Used by athletes, vegans, and high performers, New Earth's amino acid complex helps your mind and body recover, rebuild, and renew daily. Subscribe now and optimize your life.